The night wind sweeps across the desert, carrying grit that rasps against lantern glass. As the team inches toward the sealed chamber, every sound feels amplified in the stillness, from the shuffle of boots to the strained breath of those who sense they are crossing into forbidden ground. When the final slab of stone shifts, a rush of ancient air escapes like the exhale of something long denied daylight. The darkness inside seems to swallow the lantern's glow, and for a moment no one speaks. Something faint stirs, a tremble of earth or imagination, but it chills every heart just the same. As they step across the threshold, the desert grows unnaturally quiet, as though listening. And within that silence lies a question none of them dare voice aloud. What price will be demanded for disturbing this place? The air inside the chamber grows heavy, as the group's footsteps echo along walls, painted with fading scenes of forgotten rituals. The deeper they move, the more the lantern light seems swallowed, as though the darkness thickens with each breath. A cold draft slips past them, unsettling in a place sealed for centuries. The inscriptions shift from ceremonial images to warnings carved in urgent strokes, their meaning half lost to time yet unmistakably grim. When a loose stone skitters across the floor, every heart leaps, though no one admits it aloud. Something unseen presses against the silence, watching, waiting, and already, though they do not yet know, the first price has been marked. A narrow passage leads them into a chamber where a cracked sarcophagus lies half buried in debris. Dust hangs in the air like drifting ash as the lantern light reveals claw-like patterns on the stone, their origin unclear. Whispers of shifting sand echo from somewhere distant, yet no breeze reaches them here. As they circle the tomb, unease prickles at their skin, each feeling a quiet dread they cannot name. The symbols carved nearby speak of a ruler, no records mention, a name deliberately erased from history. Whatever lies within this stone shell was meant to remain hidden, and disturbing it feels like unsettling, a long, sleeping heartbeat. A faint rumble rises beneath their feet, subtle enough to question yet strong enough to stop all movement. As dust trickles from the ceiling, a sense of buried tension pulses through the chamber. The lantern flames tremble in unison, casting frantic shadows that leap across the painted walls. No one speaks, but the silence grows heavier, as though the tomb itself resents their presence. Something ancient is awakening, not with violence, but with a slow, deliberate awareness. It feels as if the past has turned its gaze upon them, and in that quiet scrutiny lies a warning they are too deep to escape. As they prepare to leave the chamber, a sudden clang echoes from the passage behind them, sharp enough to send a jolt through every chest. The lanterns sway, scattering light across fallen stones now shifted from their original place. A chill settles in the narrow corridor, coating the air with a dampness that should not exist in the desert. Each step back toward the entrance feels heavier, as if the darkness is pulling against them. When they finally emerge into the open night, the stars shine with unnerving stillness. Yet, the moment they breathe the outside air, something unseen seems to follow, slipping quietly into the world beyond the tomb. Morning light stretches across the desert, yet the camp feels colder than the night before. Conversations are hushed, broken by uneasy glances toward the tomb they left behind. The first signs of trouble appear quietly. Gear misplaced, lantern glass strangely cracked, and footprints near the tents that do not match any of their own. A sense of being followed lingers in the still air, pressing against thoughts they try to dismiss. When one of the team collapses with sudden fever, fear sweeps through the camp like a silent wind. Every strange sound, every shift of sand, feels like an answer to a warning they refuse to hear. Something has changed, and the desert seems to know it. By midday, the camp descends into quiet panic. The fever spreads quickly, striking without reason or pattern, leaving some disoriented and others unable to stand. The air feels thick, as if holding something unseen that drifts from tent to tent. Whispers rise about the inscription they ignored, the sudden cold within the tomb, the strange sounds that followed them out. Yet no one wants to admit that fear has begun to guide their thoughts. Supplies are checked and rechecked, but nothing explains the growing sickness. Every heartbeat seems louder, every breath more strained. The sense of being trapped grows, even under the open sky. As the sun dips lower, the first death arrives with a chilling stillness. The team gathers around the covered body, each person silently confronting the reality none dared imagine. The desert wind seems to pause, as though acknowledging the loss. Fear changes shape, no longer a quiet suspicion but a heavy presence settling into every breath. Some insist the cause is natural: heat, infection, exhaustion, yet their voices lack conviction. Others feel the echo of the warning etched into the stone doorway, a message they laughed at only hours before. In the fading light, hope flickers like a weak flame fighting against the gathering dark. Night gathers around them, thick with unease. The campfire burns low, offering little comfort against the encroaching shadows. Each team member retreats into quiet reflection, listening for sounds they hope not to hear. A distant rumble rolls beneath the ground, subtle yet unmistakable, as though something stirs deep within the earth. Memories of the tomb's shifting stones return with new meaning. Conversations turn to theories, each more desperate than the last, but none provide relief. Fear binds them together, yet also pulls them apart, each person wrestling with the unspoken belief that the past may not intend to let them go. As darkness deepens, a sudden scream tears through the camp, sending everyone scrambling toward the sound. They find the medical tent in chaos, supplies scattered and lantern light shattered across the sand. Another team member lies unresponsive, their face pale and their body rigid with terror. Panic surges through the group, sharper now, impossible to deny. The air tastes metallic, carrying a chill that should not exist in the desert night. In the silence that follows, a single realization settles into their minds: whatever has begun will not stop. The warning carved in stone was not a threat. It was a promise. Dawn creeps over the dunes, but its warmth does nothing to ease the chill gripping the camp. The survivors move with sluggish steps, haunted by the night's terror and the growing sense that something unseen walks among them. Illness spreads unpredictably, striking those who seemed strong only hours before. Strange marks appear on equipment, as though scratched by tools no one owns. Even the desert feels altered, its silence heavy with intent. As the team gathers to plan their next move, fear presses against every decision, turning logic into a fragile shield. They came seeking history, but now history seems to have risen to claim them. Determined to understand what they unleashed, the team returns to the tomb, though each step feels like entering a memory they regret. The air inside is colder than before, carrying a faint smell of damp stone. Deeper in the passage, new cracks split the walls, as though the earth itself reacted to their intrusion. Carvings they barely noticed on their first visit now seem to pulse with meaning, warning of a ritual gone wrong, and a ruler condemned to eternal unrest. Every symbol hints at a forgotten grief, one that reaches across time with desperate force. The team senses they're not exploring ruins. They're stepping into a story still unfinished. In a side chamber half buried in dust, they uncover fragments of tablets describing a ruler whose name was intentionally removed from history. The inscriptions speak of betrayal, plague, and a burial meant not to honor, but to contain. As the meaning unfolds, a weight settles across the room, as though the past is leaning close to listen. The lantern light reveals shadows that stretch unnaturally long, giving the sense that someone stands just out of sight. A quiet dread slips through each person, sinking deeper than fear of sickness or accidents. They realize they haven't merely disturbed a tomb. They've broken a seal meant to guard the living. Back at the camp, misfortune escalates. Tools snap without warning. Water containers split open and tents collapse even when the wind is still. Each event feels targeted, as though stripping away their sense of safety piece by piece. Fear drives whispers through the remaining team members, turning suspicion outward and inward. Some blame the desert, others blame each other, and a few begin to believe the tomb itself has reached out to punish them. A tension settles between them, fragile and dangerous. Every sound becomes a threat, every silence a warning. The curse once dismissed now feels uncomfortably real. As night falls, the desert grows unnaturally still, the kind of silence that presses against the skin. The remaining lanterns flicker low, casting unsteady circles of light across anxious faces. The team huddles together, studying Lena's translations of the tablets, hoping for answers. The story that emerges is darker than they imagined. A forgotten king buried alive after unleashing a calamity upon his own people, entombed with curses meant to ensure he could never return. Yet something in the tomb's design suggests not revenge, but containment. Real fear blooms as they realize the danger may not be mystical at all, but something ancient and tragically real. Whatever truth waits in the dark, it is closing in. Morning arrives without warmth, the sun rising behind a curtain of pale haze that dims the desert's usual brilliance. The team gathers around the remaining notes, piecing together fragments of history with trembling urgency. The forgotten ruler begins to take shape through their translations. A king whose reign ended in catastrophe, his name scraped from monuments and his story buried beneath layers of fear. The tablets speak of a sickness that swept his kingdom, one so devastating that survivors blamed him for summoning it through forbidden rites. The more they uncover, the clearer it becomes that the tomb was never meant to glorify him. It was a prison built in desperation, sealed with warnings meant to last beyond memory. And as the wind whispers across the dunes, the team senses that whatever once ravaged his world may have found its way into theirs. Driven by a need for clarity, they return to the tomb once more, the darkness inside feeling heavier than before. The deeper chambers reveal unsettling scenes carved into the walls. Citizen priests shielding their faces, and the condemned king dragged toward a burial chamber lined with symbols of containment rather than honor. Dust rises in thin clouds with each step, carrying an acrid scent that stings their throats. The quiet becomes oppressive, holding an echo of suffering so old it seems ingrained in the stone. As they study the final sequence of carvings, the truth becomes undeniable. The tomb was sealed not to protect the ruler in death, but to protect the world from whatever followed him. The realization settles over them like a shadow, too large to escape. A hidden doorway discovered behind a collapsed pillar leads them into a chamber untouched by earlier explorers. The air is colder here, damp and strangely heavy, as though saturated with centuries of sealed breath. In the center lies a stone altar bearing scrolls, wrapped in fragile linen. With careful hands, the team uncovers texts describing rituals meant to bind a plague spirit blamed for the kingdom's downfall. The writings tremble at the edge of legibility, yet their tone is unmistakably desperate. Each line speaks of a fear so consuming that the priests resorted to measures beyond reason. The team feels a growing certainty that what they face may not be supernatural, but the lingering echo of an ancient biological horror, preserved far too well in the stillness of this forgotten chamber. Outside, the desert sky darkens with gathering clouds, casting the camp in a gloomy half-light uncommon for the season. The team pores over the newly found scrolls, comparing them with the carvings and earlier translations. Threads of truth begin to weave together. The king's forbidden experiment, the plague that followed, and the desperate attempt to trap its source within the tomb's deepest chamber. Fear runs through the group as they realize how easily their disturbance could have released dormant spores or toxins preserved in the stagnant air. Arguments flare between logic and dread, each person struggling to reconcile the past with the present. Unease grows into a suffocating weight, pressing against every breath as the desert wind rises with an ominous hum. As dusk descends, the team gathers in a tight circle, the wind carrying a restless pulse that rattles equipment and sends fine sand skittering across their boots. The story they have pieced together now feels less like distant history and more like an approaching threat. They speak in tense, low voices about what they might have unleashed, whether a long-dormant disease, an airborne toxin, or something still unknown. The fear that once lurked quietly now stands openly between them, shaping every decision. When a distant rumble echoes from beneath the dunes, their hearts stop as one. It is soft yet unmistakable, like a reminder that the truth buried with the forgotten king is not finished with them, and the night ahead promises no safety. The next morning breaks with a bleak, muted light, the sky veiled by a thin curtain of dust. The camp feels smaller now, tightened by fear and the weight of what they've uncovered. Every breath carries the metallic taste of unease. The team gathers around the entrance of the tomb once more, driven less by curiosity and more by the need to understand what still lurks within. The desert seems to hold its breath as they prepare to descend. Their earlier confidence has vanished, replaced by a quiet dread that settles deep in the chest. Yet, something pulls them forward. A need for answers, for closure, for anything that might explain the rising chaos around them. Whatever lies in the hidden depths ahead, they know it is the heart of the story they have been dragged into. Inside the tomb, the air feels colder than ever, clinging to their skin like a damp shroud. Their footsteps echo through the narrow passage as they descend deeper than before, guided by Lena's translations pointing to a concealed chamber. The walls bear new cracks, as though shifting from within, releasing faint currents of stale air that scrape their throats. When they reach a collapsed section, the ground trembles underfoot, sending dust cascading in thin streams from the ceiling. Tension tightens across the group as they realize this part of the tomb was never meant to be opened again. The darkness ahead feels alive, a quiet presence waiting just beyond their sight. And for the first time, doubt grows into something heavier. Regret. When they push through the fallen stones, a chilling draft rushes past them, carrying an acrid scent that makes their eyes sting. The hidden chamber expands before them in eerie stillness. At its center lies a sealed stone vault adorned with symbols unlike the others. Sharper, urgent, etched by hands that trembled with fear. The writings surrounding it speak of a final attempt to contain the plague that ravaged the kingdom, a desperate act, sealed with curses to ward off future intruders. As the team studies the vault, a slow realization creeps through their minds. The threat was entombed, not honored. And if the sickness was preserved within, even the act of standing here might already have set its echoes free. A shared silence spreads, heavy as the stone beneath their feet. As they inspect the vault's surface, a deep rumble shivers through the chamber, shifting the dust in spirals across the floor. The ground vibrates gently, like the heartbeat of something ancient stirring beneath them. Fear ripples through the group as the rumble grows louder, echoing through the narrow passages behind them. Stones crack along the ceiling, sending fragments clattering to the ground. Panic tugs at their thoughts, urging them to flee. But the fear of leaving the tomb unstable weighs heavily. They argue in frantic whispers, trying to decide whether to seal the entrance or retreat to the surface. The shadows twist with every flicker of their lanterns, a reminder that the tomb's silence has fractured, and whatever they awakened may no longer rest. The tremors subside, but the silence that follows feels more dangerous than the shaking earth. As they gather their scattered equipment, Thomas notices a fissure along the vault's base, a thin opening releasing a faint, almost invisible mist. A sharp, cold dread grips the group as they step back, realizing the seal may have fractured under the pressure of time or their intrusion. The air near the crack shimmers slightly, and an unfamiliar smell drifts outward. Their breaths grow shallow as the truth settles upon them with crushing clarity. The containment has failed. Whatever the priests attempted to imprison, whatever catastrophe once consumed an ancient kingdom, is no longer fully confined. The weight of their discovery presses into their minds, shaping fear into something overwhelming. Responsibility. The group stumbles out of the chamber, shaken and short of breath, each step driven by a rising panic they can no longer contain. The air in the tomb feels different now, heavier, colder, carrying the faint, metallic taste that lingered near the fractured vault. Their lantern flames flicker erratically as though reacting to something unseen drifting through the passage. No one speaks, but all share the same dreadful thought. They may already be too late. When they reach the surface, the desert sky hangs low with a dull haze that dims the sun into a pale disk. The camp feels abandoned, as though the world has quietly withdrawn. Every rustle of sand seems to echo the same warning. The past they uncovered has begun to bleed into the present. By midday, the camp spirals into disarray. More team members fall ill, their symptoms appearing faster and harsher than before. Equipment fails without explanation, water supplies sour, and the air grows thick with an unsettling quiet. The remaining members gather around the medical tent, but even Nadine's calm begins to crack under the weight of mounting losses. Fear pulls them in different directions. Some urge escape, others insist on containment, while a few cling to fading hope that the sickness might still be explained. But the truth presses into every thought. The ancient catastrophe is no longer confined to stone walls. The curse they once dismissed now stands among them, silent and relentless. As the afternoon darkens beneath thickening clouds, tension fractures the group. Arguments erupt over who is responsible, who should have stopped the excavation, who still believes the disaster can be reversed. The storm overhead begins to rumble, sending waves of dust curling across the camp like ghostly hands reaching through the wind. In the chaos, old bonds strain to breaking, and fear turns allies into adversaries. Yet beneath the shouting lies a deeper terror. Each person feels the creeping suspicion that they may be carrying the ancient sickness within them. The desert seems to watch in stillness, waiting for the inevitable collapse. When night falls, it brings with it a storm that tears at the camp with relentless fury. Lanterns are blown out, tents ripped free, and half the equipment vanishes into the darkness. Thunder rolls across the dunes like a distant roar, shaking the earth beneath their feet. The survivors huddle together, shouting over the wind as they attempt to salvage what remains. Fear cuts through every movement, sharpened by the certainty that the tremors from within the tomb were not the end, but the beginning. Each gust carries the icy breath of something spreading beyond their control. The storm feels less like a natural event and more like a final warning delivered by the desert itself. By the time the storm breaks, the camp lies in ruins. Scattered supplies litter the dunes, tents are flattened, and the survivors stand shaken in the cold aftermath. A thick silence settles, heavy with the realization that their last defenses have crumbled. With the vault fractured and the sickness spreading, they face a final, devastating truth. Escaping the desert will not undo what has begun. Whatever was imprisoned in the tomb now moves freely, carried by wind, breath, and fear itself. As they stare into the empty horizon, hope thins to a fragile thread. Only one choice remains: to uncover the full truth buried with the forgotten king and find a way to stop what has been released, or watch the same ancient fate consume them all. Dawn returns with a strange stillness, the desert washed clean by the storm, yet carrying a quiet tension that grips the air. The survivors gather near the collapsed tents, their faces drawn and weary, knowing they stand at the edge of whatever story began thousands of years ago. The sickness spreads faster now, no longer creeping but pressing forward with alarming certainty. The ancient warnings feel less like superstition and more like desperate instructions left by a people who understood the cost of their failure. As the team steals themselves, a fragile determination rises among them. They cannot change what has been released, but they can still uncover the truth behind the Forgotten King's final act. If his world fell to this unseen force, perhaps he left behind a way to stop it. And if not, their last moments will be spent facing the past with open eyes. Returning once more to the tomb, the team enters with a sense of finality, each step echoing through the cold passage like the closing of a distant door. The air feels heavier now, thick with the remnants of ancient decay. They push forward until they reach the chamber of the fractured vault, its symbols glowing faintly in the lantern light. Lena lays out the final translations, revealing the Forgotten King's last plea. A warning that the true danger was not the plague itself, but the moment it was allowed to escape its prison. The chamber grows eerily still as they realize the king had sacrificed his own legacy to keep the world safe. Now their actions threaten to undo that sacrifice, and the weight of responsibility settles on them like a stone. Pressing deeper, they find a second sealed chamber beyond the vault, its entrance blocked by stones shaped with deliberate care. The carvings surrounding it depict the king in his final moments, instructing his priests to seal away the last traces of the plague before it consumed his people entirely. The room beyond contains jars, ashes, and tools arranged with ritual precision, all meant to neutralize the threat. But time has eroded what once guarded the world, leaving only remnants of a desperate solution. The team studies every detail, searching for anything that might still help them undo the damage. In the dust-covered silence, they begin to understand the king, not as a tyrant, but as someone who fought a losing battle against an invisible enemy, and whose efforts now depend on them. As they catalog the last chamber's contents, the desert outside trembles with a deep rumble, shaking the dust loose from every surface. The survivors brace themselves as the tremor rolls through the tomb like a distant roar of warning. They gather the remaining items and make their way back to the surface, burdened with fragments of history and the weight of their own unintended part in this ancient tragedy. Above ground, the sky has turned an unsettling shade, dust drifting in thin spirals that dance across the dunes. The world feels changed. Subtle, but unmistakably altered. Though there is no clear solution, the team now understands the truth behind the curse. It was never a threat from the dead, but a warning from the living, carved into stone for those who might one day awaken what should remain. Forgotten. As evening falls, the survivors stand on a dune overlooking the camp's remains, watching the wind erase their footprints one by one. They know they cannot stay, yet leaving now means carrying the weight of the tomb's secret into the wider world. The desert stretches endlessly before them, quiet and indifferent, holding centuries of forgotten stories beneath its shifting sands. The warning left by the ancient king echoes in their minds, not a curse, but a plea. They turn away from the ruins, understanding that survival now depends on sharing the truth, not hiding it. Behind them, the desert fades into darkness, and with it, the final traces of a tragedy that bridged worlds separated by time. But the future remains unwritten, shaped by what they choose to remember and what they choose to protect.